Okay, so today's video is about becoming the president, inauguration and succession. We'll be looking at how one can become the president of the United States of America. There are really a few things, a few requirements, and some things we have to do in order to do that. Your homework is to show your notes for a stamp and turn in the 4 tasks embedded throughout this presentation. Now the key here is that if you want to get a 10 out of 10 on your notes, you have to do more than just copy what is on the slides. In fact, you should not be copying what's on the slides. As you will soon see, there's a lot of text that you don't need to be writing. Instead, what you need to do is make clear bullet points, include all the key details, and also be listening to what I'm saying and putting it in your own words for your notes. This takes a lot of practice, which is why with these videos you can pause, repeat, and do what you need to do to practice taking proper notes. Everything that I cover can be tested, both what is on the slides and what I say. So please, please, please don't just copy the slides. If you do that, you will not be getting full credit for your homework. Alright, I'll check this at the beginning of the class that it's due on, so make sure that you are completing your assignments. The first thing we're going to do is look at the constitutional requirements to become the President of the United States of America. Now, most people think that the requirements to become the President would be a really long list because the job's so important. But as we're going to see, Article 2 of the United States Constitution, which lays out the rules for the President and gives the President all of his or her legitimate power, there isn't actually that much there. So what we can see is that it says, and this is the only thing it says, that no person except a natural-born citizen or citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of the President. Therefore, you must be born in the USA, as the great Bruce Springsteen would say. The only other requirement is that you have to be 35 years old. So really, there's only 2 major requirements. Now, born in the United States, 35 years old, and you've been to at least live in the United States for 14 years, which most people who are born in the USA would have done. So, the main things you gotta remember, think Bruce Springsteen, born in the USA, that you need to be 35 years old, 14 years a resident. That's it. Those are the only requirements. Crazy, huh? Now, here we do have some amendments. So we have changed things a little bit in terms of some rules for who can be the president. One of the rules was passed in 1947 by both houses of Congress, 2/3 majority, and then ratified by 3/4 of the states in 1951. Basically, what it's saying is limiting the president to 2 terms in office. So President Roosevelt, my personal favorite president, was extremely popular, and he'd actually been elected 3 times. And people were concerned that if another very popular president came into office, especially during a time of war, and they were in the Cold War at that point, that person could potentially become another dictator because they'd just rule, they'd keep winning election and re-election. So we passed Amendment 22. Now, this is one of your flashcards later on. One thing you want to think about, continuing, listing the requirements to become the president, the rules, and question number 3, do you agree or disagree with this amendment, and why? So why might there be some good reasons to perhaps limit the president to 2 terms? And what might be some problems with that? Make sure that you write full sentences and explain yourself. It is your opinion though, so you can't be wrong. Now, we have the oath of office. In Article 2, Section 1, Clause 6, clause just means line, we have what the president must do once he or she gets elected. And it very clearly states in our Constitution, again, the rules for our government, that before the president enters into the office of the president, they have to say this oath. They've got to say it word for word. If that's the rule, then that's the rule. Now, let's see what happened in 2009.
Are you prepared to take the oath, Senator?
I am.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear
that I will execute the office of President to the United States faithfully,
that I will execute
the office of President of the
the
United
office of President
States,
of the United States faithfully,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Now, what we saw was that the word faithfully was not said in the correct order. First by the man reading the oath, which was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He moved faithfully to after President of the United States. Therefore, afterwards, they in fact went and they said it again, just in case, to make sure that the president had in fact been sworn in correctly so that he could take the oath of office. So he could take his office. It's very important to follow the Constitution. If you don't follow the Constitution, then you may not actually be legitimate and therefore would have not been the President of the United States. So they fixed it. Everything's okay. Obama is in fact the President of the United States of America. Now, we have Amendment 20. Amendment 20 was ratified during World War II. Right before World War II. Now this just says when the president should officially take office. So they set a start date and an end date. It is the 20th day of January of their first term, of their first year in office. So that just made it very clear when one person would leave and the other person would enter. Now we have succession. Succession is what occurs if a president dies. So it is possible to become president without having won an election. That would be through succession. So question 4, your final question asks, what happens if a president can no longer fulfill their duties? Now, there have not been very many times throughout history where we've needed the vice president to rise to the occasion and become the president of the United States. It is usually a major tragedy. Only a few presidents have resigned. None have been impeached in the past 100 years. And so, really, the only time that it would probably be necessary, barring any major scandal, is if the president died. John F. Kennedy was assassinated in the 1960s. This is Vice President Johnson, and he was sworn in 2 hours after the assassination of President Kennedy inside of Air Force One, and he became the next President of the United States of America. Amendment 25, which was passed after the assassination of President Kennedy by 2/3 of Congress and ratified by 3/4 of the states. Again, ratified means voted to pass. Is about what should happen should the vice president have to become the president of the United States of America. If the vice president becomes the president, then there is no longer any vice president. So, this new president has to nominate a vice president. It will be sent to the House and the Senate, and they have to vote to confirm that person. So they have to vote yes or no. As long as the majority of the House and the Senate vote to confirm, vote yes for that person, then that person becomes the new Vice President of the United States of America. This would also occur if the Vice President died or resigned. Now in 1947, after World War II, we had just used the atomic bomb on Hiroshima in 1945, and people were very afraid. Therefore, we created a Chain of Succession Act. An act is just a law passed by Congress and signed by the President. Now in this case, the Chain of Succession Act gave a whole list of people who would rise to become the president if everyone before them was dead or unable to fulfill the job of the president. This was mainly due to the fear of a nuclear attack. If a nuclear bomb went off in DC and did happen to kill many politicians, the question was who would become the president in perhaps our greatest hour of need. As we can see here, the vice president is still number one. If the president dies, it goes to the vice president. If the vice president can't do the job, it goes to the Speaker of the House, so the leader of the House of Representatives. If the Speaker can't do it, it goes to the President of the Senate. If that person can't do it, it goes to the Secretary of State. And it goes on and on and on and on. So, the main thing here that you need to know is the Vice President is the first pick. Speaker of the House is the second pick. You will not have to memorize the rest, but you will definitely need to memorize spots number 1 and 2. And that's it. That's how you can become the President of the United States. You can be 35 years old, a natural-born citizen, lived in the United States for 14 years, or you could potentially serve as Vice President, and should the President pass away, you would become the president. Now, one thing I left out are elections. So please note that just because you're 35 does not mean you can become the president. We will be talking about elections. It will get its own day, so please